get started. So I'm recording now. Not there. What is that? Isn't it interesting? Okay, so we're going to go through the history / classification of typography. If I can get the computer to work. Fire to working. Select. No, don't select. Oh, it worked. Okay. Okay, history of typography. We're going to take a look at the brief history of typography and the classifications through different historical eras. Of course, we all know about the prehistoric and the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Formal writing started way before that. Hieroglyphics from the Egyptians, and then we went into cuneiform. I don't know if you all are familiar with cuneiform. It was pretty much it until Romans era. Cuneiform is a logo stylist, syllabic writing system that was used to write several languages of the ancient Near East. The script was in active use from early Bronze Age until the beginning of the Common Era. Cuneiform scripts are marked and named by characteristics of the wedge-shaped impressions, Latin cunus, which form their signs. Cuneiform is the earliest known writing system and was originally developed to write the Sumerian language in southern Mesopotamia, which they used a lot for trading and money. And we skip all the way to the medieval era because we went over all the Roman era. And we get to the medieval era. These scripts showcased intricate graphics. Let me make sure. Yeah. Intricate graphics in that influenced animal style, often associated with the Northern European barbarian culture. These designs included elaborate interlaced patterns and geometric decorations reflecting a rich visual tradition. And then we had the birth of the early modern graphic design renaissance and the industrial era, and enters Gutenberg and his game-changing invention, the printing press, which, just to let you know, the Chinese had also invented printing with porcelain letters prior to this, and we're doing printing prior to this, but this is when it became industrialized. So from that, we get the black letter, which was used during the 1400s. And we have Futur or Franktur, which is also known as black letter. And there are a lot of forms of black letter out there. This is not just the only one, but it's the main one. There are a whole series of subcategories of black letter typeface, each with its own characteristics, but they're all based on the original calligraph style with tall, narrow letters and sharp angled lines. Fonts such as Gutenberg and Franktor are popular modern interpretations of the first print typeface. So then we get into the Humanist era, and this is also called the Venetian era. The hand-inspired pre-Venetian lettering was difficult to read and time-consuming to set. It did not reflect the demands and productivity of Gutenberg's printing press. In response, typesetters began looking for inspiration in various writing forms. Venetian, also called humanistic, and Renaissance antiqua typefaces based on pen-formed writing, characterized by, I'm supposed to say, strong oblique access, low contrast, and abrupt letter forms based on broad-tipped pens. Interesting. So this is an example of that. So in Italy, the German black letter style was soon replaced with the typeface inspired by Roman inscription. Still based on hand lettering, these fonts have the characteristics of angled crossbars on the letters E and a high stress, which relates relates to how the scribe would hold a pen. Centaur and Jensen are modern fonts of the humanistic style. And then we get to Garamond, old style, with typefaces now being carved to form printable fonts. Typographers began to experiment and design their own type. Rather than mimic existing scripts, fonts such as Garamond and Gaudy Old Style are from the era and are characterized with a move towards more upright letters and straighter crossbars compared to the previous humanistic typefaces, as well as more variations between thick and thin strokes. As you can see by the line from this one to that one. They're similar, but a little bit different. That was the 1400s, 1500s to 1700s. And we're still in the serif phase. Everybody remember what a serif is? It's a little thing on the top. So now we're into the old style, 1500s to 1700s. The old style types can be further divided into 4 categories, as in the figure below, and span the Roman types from Francesco Grifo to William Caslon I. And like the relatively short-lived humanistic faces, the old style faces held sway for more than 2 centuries. A number of them are still popular text faces today. Garamond, Carson, Caslon is one of them we still see today. And it tells you who invented them and at what time they were invented. Now we're in traditional, aka realistic, the 1700s. And we have Baskerville, which is really used a lot today. And it shows you on this little diagram over here on the side the difference between the two. Old style from traditional. Baskerville has less calligraphic flow than most earlier typefaces, whereas the earlier humanistic and old types owned much to the handwritten letter form. The pen's influence has disappeared in the traditional type. So as you can see with the traditional, there's not as much as a lean to the pen, as in they're becoming more upright over time. So it goes from here to from like 11 to almost 12, and now they're at 12 o'clock. And here's transitional, also known as realist in the 1700s. We're straight up and down. We have a vertical and a high contrast going on with Baskerville. And the trend of more upright letters and greater contrast in strokes continued into the transitional era, which is the period between old style and modern font designs. Traditional fonts such as Baskerville are more elegant, with broad strokes becoming much thinner within the character, and the stress is now perfectly vertical, so the same amount on each side. And remember these fonts I'm introducing. As I said, whatever is introduced, you guys can use. We'll go into serifs, sans serifs next week, or next time. Didon, aka modern, 1800s. The most famous Didot typefaces were developed in the period of 1784 to 1811. Fernman Didot, I can never get that right, cut the letters and cast them as type in Paris. His brother, Pierre Didot, used the typefaces in print. His edition of Les Hendrades by Volatar in 1880 or 1818 is considered his masterwork. The typeface takes inspiration from John Baskerville's experimentation with increasing stroke contrast and the more condensed armature. The Didot family's development of high contrast typefaces or typeface with an increasing stress in contemporary to similar typefaces developed by, I'll try this, Ghimabazie Bodini, and I just say Bodini, in Italy, and we're going to look at Bodini. So as you can see, it's much more upright and more contrast between the two, and then they start making a whole family of them. Bodoni, that's the way you say it, Bodoni, aka modern, 1800s. Fonts from the 18th century that took the type design trends to the max were known as Didon or modern. These typefaces have extreme contrast with broad strokes, reducing to thin hairlines, along with unbracketed serifs that abruptly change from thick to thin without a transitional curve. Didot and Bodoni are two most recognizable Didon typefaces. And Bodoni is used a lot. I feel like more than Didot. Oh, and we're going to stop there. So next week we're going to get into slab serifs and sans serifs. And you can use up to Bodoni. So we had, let's go back. What did we introduce? Well, I don't think you're going to use black letter. Centaur, probably not. Humanist. There are humanist typefaces out there, and I think they're listed in that acceptable typeface, but don't use those yet. Just the ones that we introduced. Garamond.
Do you mean for our project one?
Because I think project exercise 1 or exercise 3 tells you what ones you can use. I can't remember. Does it? I think it specifically says in there what ones you can use. But for project 1, yes.
Okay,
If it says you can use up to what we've already covered in class, then you can do that. But if it says in the project or in the exercise, use only these ones, use only those ones.
okay, I'll
Because I
just
think
read.
it starts at project 1.
So if I just read it, I can
Mm-hmm.
see what it is. Okay.
Yeah. Baskerville, Bodoni. So Bodoni, Baskerville, Garamond. Probably not. You're probably not going to use those two. Black letter and Centaur. Humanistic. There's more humanist typefaces out there. Jensen might be one of them. It might be available in, I don't know if this one's available in Adobe, but I think Jensen might be available in there. But you'll find that the thicker, thin, like more the traditional ones might work better depending on depending on it's because one's a letter, one's a number, and one's a symbol. Depending on, you might get more, like, depends on what you're going for and the word you're going to use. You might want the thick, thin, or you might want the more traditional, straight up and down, evenly balanced fonts for those. Whereas Garamond has a little bit more of a curviness to it, and it's still got a bit of the slant to the left. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop recording.